So again, my name's Al Heron. Absolute pleasure to welcome you today. We got a really interesting session today. We're going to be talking about marine oil and gas and that guided journey to AI success. What we'll do, we'll look at the agenda in a short while. I just want to say thank you for everyone that's turning up today. We've got people from lots of parts of the world today, so really interested, really great to see you. Very specific in what we're talking about today. Our agenda today. So if 85% of AI projects fail, how can we help avoid common pitfalls? How can we make sure that that guided journey within oil and gas or in energy or in marine, how can we make sure we can avoid some common pitfalls? So we'll be focusing on that. We'll be asking our star of the show. But then, of course, Gen AI and AI as a whole. How do you train your team? So if we have technologies in place, how do we make sure that we can actually train people? The Gen AI as a whole has taken the world by storm. How do we make sure that people are geared up? And then, of course, today was always around real world success stories. So forget common pitfalls. How have we delivered? And how can we help you take you on that journey? At that point, I'm going to bring on Annie. Annie, if you'd like to join us. So Annie, absolute pleasure to join you.
Hello.
For you to join us today.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really interesting. I mean, I'm sitting back at the moment because I think we're going to have a story to talk about this, and maybe you know, I know, for example, I've got sometimes I get stuck around the M25. I'm based in the UK. I know because we've spoken before around certain times that you've got stuck and had to call your husband because you've been maybe on this guy. So very relevant to marine oil and gas. But at first, actually, Annie, I want to flip this across to yourself. Do you want to just give us a little bit of introduction? You know, how you started as a data scientist, maybe a couple of areas of interest around today's topic.
Al, thank you very much, and hi everyone. It's great to have you all in the room. And you know, I've always wanted to have this kind of a more informal chat with everyone, where there's lots of and guys, please participate, please ask questions when we have questions sections. It's really relevant to the people attending today. I've worked in this industry for 25 years, specifically in industrial. I've been in data science for about 28 years, but for my sins, very early in my career, arrived in an industrial space. I'm a statistician by trade, a data scientist, and thought I would train in more business and marketing type statistics and account business management, and ended up for my sins majoring in statistics and starting to work with large industrial companies, steel mills, mines, and rigs and refineries and those kinds of guys. And very early learned to put on my hard hat and some boots, Al. And yeah, I think I recounted to you that one of the marine vessels for one of my customers, I was supposed to go on there for a site inspection for a day, and then ended up rough seas. The helicopter couldn't come and fetch us. And there's only satellite phone communication. I had to phone my hubby to let the guys at the office know Mommy's not coming home. And I'm staying on the rig in a lent berth and some overalls, but that's life. And guys, you know, that really, and I think I teach a class, and I don't think I do teach a class for young data scientists, a day in the life of a data scientist. And these are some of the things that, you know, I don't have to tell you guys. You work in these hostile environments, doing your job and muddling through very complex data problems and AI problems in a very hostile environment is something quite different from where traditional AI evolved from. Also, so yeah, the Data Shack was born there 2001 because you know, just started getting so many customers asking us to implement this over and over again, and working with them, and a lot of them for over 20 years.
Yeah, Annie, I remember, and I had the pleasure. I think we met in the industrial kind of still heartlands of
Hmm.
the UK here, in our car manufacturing. We went to a big car manufacturing plant. Well, I think what you will realise is we're not going to use always customer names here, for certain reasons. But I remember actually, Annie, you told me then that your favorite thing isn't sitting behind a desk. It's actually putting. I think you laughed at me because I didn't have any steel toe cap
Safety
boots, and you
boots.
called me the office
Hmm.
guy, which is quite right. But you told me actually that this love of engineering and actually making things probably comes from much earlier on. Do you want to talk to me maybe about someone that has a real impact on your life?
Yeah, my dad was an engineer. My dad worked in equivalent of what Network Rail, I guess, is today, and engineering of train wheels, train tracks, those kinds of things. So very early on a Saturday, I would sometimes visit the plant with him and go and see what really goes on there, and was just kind of fascinated by that, and didn't realize until I was much older and working in those environments, everything that went into it, and it made it just as I grew older, kind of emulating that with my little hard hat and steel-toed shoes, as you said rightly. They're always in the boot of my car because I like to kick the tires, if you will, and I like to understand real world problems, and they are not ones solved on spreadsheets, and that you have to go see the process. I can sit and try and navigate my way through a database and look at building AI algorithms. I need to understand the business, and so we need to be, have that closeness. And I've always wanted the Data Shack to be that kind of company where we really understand what our customers do. We don't do business with thousands of masses. We do business with people where we feel we can add real value,
Yeah.
and we know their business, and we have the skill and experience. But really, having a passion for it is much more important than anything else, and knowing why it's important, and
Yeah.
what the effects are of what we do on a daily basis.
And I think actually, if we look just to news of this week, so Annie, in the North Sea at the moment, we've had an issue with a collision, a major collision within the marine industry.
Yeah.
So it really brings back that impact. Um, they really have. It really shows the impact that getting things right in these environments and these hostile, but also ultra dangerous environments can be as well. So we want to touch on that. I think unless we've been under a rock or maybe out on an oil rig for a few years, Gen AI is making some lots of waves. So Annie, this is around pitfalls, how to avoid them. Um, and we're going to talk about methodologies and approaches. So, Annie, I mean, is there anything? I know you've got a couple of slides around this. Is there
Mhm.
anything you want to kind of touch on before we look at those, or should we jump into your slides now? How do you?
I'm going to jump into my slides, but just with the proviso that I'll give a little bit of background and why am I talking about these things, guys? That's it. So, guys, just some background before I start, uh, is that specifically in these industries, we I think Al and I and the marketing team attended two very significant sort of engineering and manufacturing conferences in the last while, and a lot of the research. Yes, we use industry research like Gartner and the like, but a lot of the research that you see today comes from actual people in your industry, from industrial and engineering. And understanding really those problems that our customers have. And as Al was saying, 85% of these projects fail. Why do they fail? They fail to deliver value. Why do they fail? We see most often because people don't know where to start. Our customers don't always know where it is that they need to be starting from. So what we've done as a matter of course is then to start saying, where do you start, and what makes these projects not deliver? What makes these projects not deliver? What I really want to say to you guys is, why do these things fail? These things fail because number one, um, engineering and heavy industry is scared to start. Only 9% of the companies that were surveyed at these events, the last one was about 16,000 engineering companies and manufacturers, and they basically were telling the researchers that they're doing it well and they're doing okay. And I've got some customers in the room today in oil and gas that are doing really well at deploying AI, and have really thought about it because they've got an amazing AI and data science teams throughout their business. But that's kind of 9%, and that statistic is a little bit worrying. 63% of them told us they don't know where to start. They're scared to start because they don't know where. And that's why we have worked more and more, and through the years learned what works, what doesn't work. And we really suggest a bimodal approach. As you see here, it delivers value. What do I mean by a bimodal approach? We've developed 9 building blocks where we can say to you, we start with helping you pick those use cases that will work with AI readiness assessment, looking at the potential use cases within your entire value chain, from front to back, from if you're marine, mining sort of business, from ore processing, right up until your final beautiful diamond, and your gold comes out the end of that process. Where do we think AI will deliver value? Picking that first use case. And once we've picked that first use case with you, then testing the 9 building blocks, meaning, are we mature in our people skills? Do we have the right platforms? Are we asking the right questions? Do we have management buy-in? Do we have all the things that make AI projects successful? And the bimodal approach is start small, start with that first use case, build up all the right things and a plan to deliver more use cases while we're solving number 1 and testing all of the methodologies, all of our systems. Can we scale eventually to ending up with a AI center of excellence within our business at the end of the day, where we can just grab a new use case and solve. So that's bimodal. Start small, do one, move on from there, build up the capacity and the methodology so that from use case number 2, I can deploy at scale, right? And that's really the key. So guys, we found that planning for it properly is really, really key to making sure that we can get you started. So please, if you want to find out more about just, am I ready? Can I get ready? How do I get ready? What are the right things to do? Can I have a plan, and how does that plan work? What are the things I need to deploy successfully? Please, there's an ebook for you. There's AI readiness assessment, a little bit more information. Scan the QR code, go there if you can. The next aspect is, just some tips and tricks before we go back to side chat mode, is to what are my tips? And guys, I've got, again, we've got an ebook on this. This is a quick summary. I don't want to spend too much time. But guys, what makes AI work? What makes AI deployments work? And with being scared, with close on 65% of you guys telling us I'm scared to start, I don't know where to start. What are the things we know helps on this process? The first thing, start right now, don't wait. The stats are showing us that in these industry leaders we talked about, right? All of them, not just all of them, told us that deploying AI and automating things within their business processes is in their top 5 strategic directives. So guys, think about that. Just think about that for a minute. It's one of your top directions. Get started. Don't wait. People have started. People have been successful, but do it the right way. So that's my first tip. Don't wait. Use that bimodal approach. Do something small. Start with something, learn from it, build up that capacity within your business. And there's ways we can help you to do that very fast. My tip number 2 is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. What do I mean by that? I mean, you guys, I know I've worked with you for years. You are process engineers, metallurgical engineers, mineral engineers, well engineers in the oil and gas industry. You guys understand methodologies like Lean Six Sigma, all of the cool engineering things you get taught. Just know that those marry very well with AI methodologies, and we help you marry those. And so don't throw out those things you've spent money on deploying within your business. They are sound methodologies to use. We just help you add the analytical AI machine learning aspects to the fray. So don't throw away those things that you learned. Tip number 3, choose AI built for a factory, built for an industrial plant, built for an engineering environment, guys. Certainly, as I said to you, when I studied to become a data scientist statistician. I thought I would go into business or finance or marketing, CRM, those kinds of applications of statistical modeling and AI. I ended up immediately, because you can hear from my accent, I grew up in South Africa. My first customer was a very large steel mill, and I had to go get my hands dirty there working with engineers. And I'll tell you a little bit of a tidbit later when we talk about skills and in just a minute. But traditionally, the platforms, the tools are not built with you guys in mind. They're built with insurance, finance in mind. So when you're looking at AI, make sure that whoever you're working with, whatever tools you're working with, are built for an industrial and engineering environment. We often find that people go search for things out there. Algorithms are developed for credit scoring, customer engagement, and things like that. You want something that applies to your environment. Tip 4, we already spoke about this. Make sure that you're ready, do the right things, follow the step, tick the boxes, use the methodologies, guys. That's why things fail, because we don't plan to scale. We're too scared to start, so we don't start, or we try and start without a plan. And so make sure you are ready to start. Now, the last one is really close to my heart. At the National Manufacturing Summit last year, I was asked to speak specifically about that, nurturing your talent. Can I, in an industry where we're talking to a community of engineering employees and people who are really kicking the tires, can we nurture that talent? What do I do? Do I go hire people outside there in industry? Do I go hire a data scientist that knows nothing about my business? Or do I work with somebody, and what do I do? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, because that's one of the things we invited you here for. So tip number 5. So I'm doing a little bit more of a deeper dive into tip number 5, guys. And what do we mean when we say train your staff, guys? I want to share, and this is the little tidbit I wanted to share with you. When Harry met Annie, Harry is a customer of mine. This is not Harry's real picture. He's a little bit older, just like me. We don't look like those pictures anymore. just a tad different. We're about 30 years older. But the first day I walked into the steel mill working with Harry, with my little laptop and business suit, he said to me, "Hello, sweetheart, and where's your boss?" And that was my first consulting gig as a young statistician, walking into his office, and I kind of smiled and said to him, "Well, my boss is making us some coffee, but let's you and I get started. And if you think I'm stupid, you can throw me out, and you don't have to work with me." It was just a joke. Harry and I became great colleagues and friends, and working together now for a long, long time. Why? I had talent in understanding what modeling needed to be done. He had engineering skills. He knew what was happening in his plant. He knew the problems he had. It was up to the two of us working together to solve a problem. My skills came in very handy when I could go and walk through his plant and understand what his problems were and help him solve them with what I'd been trained on. And guys, the great news is, especially if you're in oil and gas and energy, you're talking not only about AI, but Gen AI. some of the forefront of you guys, customers in this room today, is really a leader at training their teams on Gen AI and getting that out, the word out there. What are the uses? Where in our business can we use this? How can we make things easier? But it's using a two-pronged approach. Make sure that your highly technical people get taught the skills to be able to drive and understand at least what we are doing and what we're working towards. I have a colleague at one of the big mining houses, the diamond mining houses, and which some of you are again in the room today with marine mining technologies. And the first day, she explained her problems to me. I presented to her leadership team. She was the head of security and intelligence, and we'll talk a little bit more about that use case later. She said to me, Annie, it made me a little bit nauseous. I'm old school. When I listened to what you were proposing, I had to go and just have a sip of water because I thought, how the hell are we going to do this? But knowing that you can walk the path, you don't have to have those skills, but you can work with an experienced person that will help you navigate your way through AI with your skills. And it's always important then, once we've built that platform, to skill your workers. At least they understand what it is doing, they understand what it is saying. And some of them will naturally gravitate and grab that and want to learn how to do it themselves. And that's a small proportion sometimes of your teams. But guys, I've trained now hundreds of engineers. They really do well at these things, learning analytics and data science skills and the stats and the math skills. So I'll just, as we kind of leading back into a few just our use case fireside chat, I just want to kind of finish with some successes, guys. Again, there's an oil and gas customer of ours in the room today that I really commend. We've got a few of those, 4 or 5 oil and gas customers, but this one stands out for me just because they're innovating. They're always at the forefront. We've worked with them since 2019, right? Training well engineers, training geologists, training metallurgical engineering staff on what AI is, just basic analytics, building dashboards in tech tools like Power BI and Spotfire, a few of the tools that they use internally in energy space. But getting into the deeper, what data science algorithms can I utilize, clustering and all of these kinds of things. How can I sort of muddle my way around that and how it will work? We started in 2019. We are training currently over 1,000 people a year through those programs every single month. And most recently in the last year, we've introduced GenAI courses for them, just literacy. And there we have the general business community just coming to understand what GenAI is. How can they use it? How do we use chatbots and virtual assistants today to help us? I can ask questions and it comes back with some suggestions and answers, but it uses my data, my engineering specs, my SOPs, internal to my business. It makes life easier. And what back office areas is this being used? So guys, it's really exciting for me and making sure really that we get these people trained. And energy is one of the energy sector, and some of the mining houses are leading edge, cutting edge in this industry.
I wanted to jump in. I'm mindful of time. And we've got lots of time, by the way, but I'm mindful of time because there are questions coming in, and actually you're answering one of them. And one of the questions that's just popped in is a training program that was developed, but there was no adoption. So it's interesting, actually, because we've touched now on that use case and the success and the uptake. I think that you talked about a wait list. So let's flip that question. Let's flip that question, actually, Annie. If we stay on fireside chat, if we flip that question to how did you drive adoption? Was it buy-in from senior management within the EP company, the energy exploration company? How did you achieve that success?
Well, it was really a bunch, number one, within that business, a bunch of very passionate people. It's a digital learning drive within their organization. just making sure and having a passion for assuring that their communities are served well, and they get trained on the things that strategically align. So yes, a big drive from top management, number one, very important. Number two, it was a really forward-thinking HR and digital learning team that went and saw that what do we need in a digital skills if we all talking, guys, every conference I go to, I hear digital transformation, digital transformation. It's sometimes like the word AI that's now everybody's putting on their banners and driving me nuts, because I really do it for a living. But I see that drove the passion. They went out there, they understood what the industry is asking. They are digitally transforming their workforce from the guys at an oil well, right down to the bottom there. Up to the guys on their rigs, and guys, I kind of thought this was politically incorrect when they said to me they've got a multi-skilled worker that's now being replaced by robots called roughnecks. And when I heard the word roughneck, I live in Britain. I'm South African, but calling a skilled worker a roughneck, I thought it was really politically incorrect until I realized it was actually a new type of multi-skilled robot, but they were calling that kind of person just a person that's a multi-skilled person that needs to be able to understand how the whole process works. But it was interesting for me that they're teaching every person in their business digital skills, whether it just being able to report on what happened on their shift on a dashboard and doing some basic analysis, right up until the engineering communities. So I think they did that really, really well, and taking absolutely every person with them.
I think
what's
very interesting. I think what's very interesting there, Annie, is, and I appreciate the question, but actually, and we'd love to talk a little bit further. So please DM me if we can chat about this. I've seen the opposite of, actually, there's a huge amount of desire from people across the organisation to embrace Gen AI. But we've seen this. Annie, you talked about not looking as young as you are in that picture. People probably seen I've got a few grey hairs. I've seen different types of technologies, big data, digital transformation, 4.0, and everyone jumps on the back. And actually, there is a lot of desire. I think the very interesting thing here is that there are things that can be known within the IT team or the senior management team as grey technology. And what that means is that people within your organization will start adopting, for example, GenAI. They may be starting to looking at a ChatGPT, but the areas there is, and one of the issues there, certainly that we've seen before, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of research around this, unless there's a company-wide strategy and training people, you're going to have the wrong results. So we know that one of the worst things to have is siloed data, because if manager in plant A or ship B or rig C is looking at the wrong kind of data without a kind of strategy to look at the right kind of data, they can get the wrong results. So you could be in a situation, the worst situation, where you're in a board meeting, or you're looking at a new strategic entry into a marketplace or exploration, and the results are skewed because there's not an enterprise-wide area. I want to stop and I think I know we're meeting tomorrow and we're going to have some lunch. I wanted to talk to you about this. So this is the new Momentum report. It's just been launched by the manufacturer, and it's a survey from over 1,000 manufacturers. And it was very interesting because when we're talking about that skills gap, there's a big shift from senior management saying we have a skills gap. We need to find people with AI and analytics capabilities to actually now understanding that there is a training going on. And that's in the last year, there's been a massive shift. Annie, I haven't shared that research with you, and there's something I want to talk about. But please please chat to us around training programs, because it's something that we can deploy in your industry. Yeah. Annie, I want to move on, if that's okay. Now, this is the exciting bit, because we've got two really exciting use cases, right? But the key thing is we're going to look at them in topic. So when we invited everyone that turned up today, we talked around pitfalls, how to avoid. So we're going to look at these use cases, which I think are fascinating. With drones and all sorts of great things, and in some really inhospitable places where humans can't get to. I think that's really cool, but we're going to look at it through this lens. How can we look at these use cases and make sure that we can avoid those common pitfalls? Annie, back over to you.
Thanks, Al. Guys, I want to make some questions. As I say, this is supposed to be a bit of a interactive, more fireside chat, and not just me showing you some slides. I hate that. I like discussions around these things. But I want to explain a use case quickly. We've got two use cases we really want to show you. One coming from an oil and gas perspective, another one coming from a marine mining operation. But what I really wanted to chat about really is how are these companies adopting AI? What have we worked with them that's been successful? Because if you in one of the people in the room today that sits and says, I'm a little bit scared to start, I don't know where to start, it scares me a little bit. How do I start? How did these guys start? And how long did it take them? Because that's kind of key for you guys to understand that. So the first use case is, and this is here from the UK, very large British oil and gas off the coast of Scotland. A lot of their rigs, and they're all over the world, but it's a British business, and they were kind of our very first large oil and gas customer that really embraced a sort of AI journey. Other use case talks about marine, and this is a diamond mining operation. Again, won't name names, but the leading industry leading company in the world, and working initially. I've worked with this company since this customer since 2003. First, just adopting around the environment and ore processing and sampling, and where do we mine, where do we get the best yield out of our product, how do we get the biggest, largest stones that we can sell to customers, and these are diamonds, guys. That sort of process evolved over the 2000s into about 2011, when they came to us and said, we need to be, yes, we've got non-malicious things that happen in our plants where it's just inefficiency. But we're starting to see more and more that our people are being pressured. And we moved into the security and intelligence space, where we found that illicit diamond trade was costing, at that point, really early statistics we got from the market in Europe was about 200 million euros at that point in time in illicit diamond trade happening. And again, those stones come only from a few places, guys. So we started working, after working many years, about 10, 11 years in the engineering space, making plants more efficient, working on continuous improvement in their own production facilities, working then in people behavior, understanding what's happening? When are people moving outside of their regular norms? Who's talking to whom? Even in syndicates and people that are out there trading in these things, understanding that, and how are our systems vulnerable, and using AI and machine learning to understand those relationships, and really getting to the crux of what was going wrong, where were we, where a perfect storm is likely to is actually likely to happen. So we really started looking at their process performance. What happened? When were we seeing large stones disappearing? Where is it happening because of irregularities, stoppages in plants and things like that? And we really made use. We've got currently data from about 16 data sources feeding into our models and algorithms, with early warning systems saying these things are going wrong. There's a potential that we need to intervene, and there's something we need to be doing to prevent this from happening. So guys, we really did a hell of a lot of work making sure that we use the masses of data coming from their control systems, their plant management systems, their geological surveys, their people, are people on leave, are they not, why am I in the plant, access control, all kinds of systems. And again, this is highly confidential work, but this is what I have permission to share. But understanding that we can use algorithms to look at this data all simultaneously and see if patterns are happening, because it's about putting those, as Al was saying, silo data sources together. Really then started understanding external sources, things like text analytics. This was before even Gen AI, and moving and working with those things, bringing it all together into algorithms that could really inform. And I'm kind of going to just pause here for a couple of questions. But what made us successful, guys? Exactly what I was talking about. Harry met Annie. Working with experts in the field, domain experts, business process experts, you see what I'm saying there, working with engineers, asking them, I'm seeing this pattern, what does it mean? Do you understand it? Does it tell you what your process is doing? Why is this happening when three of those people are always moving there as well, talking with security intelligence experts within their business and outside in the industry, bringing our data science expertise and putting this all together so that we can answer the questions that's most salient to them to avoid losing product and to attack illicit trade very, very hard and fast.
We've got a nice question come in, actually. It's quite interesting. I think you'll enjoy this one, because we talked about mines, but actually the ship behind there. So we're also talking about marine. So I got a question from someone working in a geologist in marine. So their data isn't allowed to leave the ship, and therefore, what's that scenario? You know, they talk to providers, everything needs to be in the cloud. How would you position that one? Because I think that, I mean, we don't want to start talking about data, you know, but
no. It's not always about not their environments are sort of on-prem cloud environments. However, as you say, the speed at which we can get data from what we call the edge on the ship, the speed at which data goes up to the cloud and to central storage running through algorithms is perhaps once a day if the weather is good, right? Kind of thing. But you need to make sure that, yes, while we always want everything up there to make sure the algorithms remain current, understands the data, brings all of the stuff together, that does not prevent you from running what we call edge analytics on the vessel itself, that applies the rules that it's learned from the AI algorithm right at the edge and doesn't need to be consistently connected to the cloud. It can run on my vessel, making smart decisions and warning me right that moment. On the vessels, you're kind of lucky because in a way, lucky people stay on those vessels for up to, I think, 60 days or more before they have what they call shore leave. But on land, it's a little bit different. Those guys work shifts and they're out of the plant 8 hours later. You know, they work for 8 hours and leave. So you've got to be far more sort of fast and reacting. However, making sure you can run edge analytics, these rules can run completely away from the cloud on your edge devices. So absolutely, very good question, whoever asked that.
So a very specific question, which is, so again, in this marine environment, we're using real-time analytics to reduce our carbon footprint, or ESG and environmental concerns. Now, this is really interesting. So we've gone suddenly from closed environments to how actually are we using this for ESG plus our reporting? Now, do you want to touch on that very quickly, Annie? And I'm mindful of time, so we probably need if we're going to go on to that next use case.
I'll be very quick. Yeah, I'll be very quick. We work with the leading who actually is a customer of ours, who we've are collaborating with, who we've become partners with. We work with a leading service provider, and we've added this into our own products, Sigmafi. We're busy really testing this out, testing it with our manufacturing engineering customers, because a part of, usually we talk to the engineering guys, we talk to safety, health, environment, quality, these kinds of guys, and that's where that data touches one another, because it's becoming more and more important with legislation across the EU, that with our financials and what we produce, we also have to provide our carbon reporting. And so very important, great question, guys, and please talk to us a little bit more about that, because we are incorporating into our products carbon scoring, understanding that your supply chain is green, not just you and the way you run your plants, but your supply chain is green, and we can help you with strategies to reduce those.
Yeah, if we look at this industry as a whole, actually some of the big the big energy and production or the big EP companies actually sometimes when it gets to the rig are actually operated by third parties. So that's what we call supply chain. We have some very interesting legislation coming up. So look, that's not the topic. But what I do want to say, I'm really pleased to see that question, because actually we will be looking at a product launch very soon around scope 3 emissions. So if that's of interest, ping us in between time. Please. Annie, I want that next use case. I love this next use case. I think it's a really cool one. And we're going to look at robots and autonomous. We're going to look at rednecks and drones here, maybe.
So guys, and it's roughnecks, not rednecks. Anyways, so guys, this is the customer, the oil and gas customer I was actually talking about off the coast of Scotland. But we started working with them, I would say, in sort of 2015, 16, understanding, very highly sophisticated pieces of equipment within their business and on their rigs that needed to be inspected daily, weekly for things like corrosion and rust. These things are very expensive. They've got hectic pricing on the engineering. We needed to make sure that we automate these kinds of inspections. And the first time we kind of went on the rig and saw what they were doing, that was the old way that this was being done. Somebody hanging off the side. This cost them up to £200,000 per week of inspection, and it took a week to cover the whole rig. And they needed a helicopter for safety and boats, lifeboats and safety out in the water. It cost a whole bunch of money. It took a whole lot of time. We worked with our drone partners, Drone Major, to at least start working, at least having manned drone inspections versus a person hanging off a rig in a safety harness. Starting to teach, and we gathered data in the beginning to actually start building algorithms to help us predict corrosion, and that we could use ML and AI. So the first sort of iteration of this was then being able to have a person doing this, and the next iteration was actually the drone automatically flying off, doing its inspections every day quickly, seeing if there's anything wrong, feeding the data back to us. We turn that pixelated data into actual data that we can analyze, and we can give them a corrosion score based on the pictures the drones actually took during the surveys. I'm going to say, like, we can tell you where there's places on your plant, places on the rig where we need inspections. The drone technology today is so sophisticated. Tiny little, we call it a blade drone. It's tiny, guys. It's kind of smaller than your cell phone, and it can fly around your plant. Highly sophisticated camera on there. But where are we today with them? We've actually started using GenAI. They've got a maintenance assistant where their maintenance team in their coffee sessions, we've trained data, we've collected enough data up to now, maintenance data in 10 years now, 9.5 years, where we actually have a Gen AI assistant where they can go and say, we've seen places where there's corrosion scores. If you see that by 0.28, I can submit and it will go and say to me that this is severely compromised. My models are telling me that. What is the recommendations? Because we have business data around it. What should my maintenance crew be doing today? So guys, really interesting use case here.
Annie, a couple of things. So we've had there was a nice comment that just came in around wow, the application of drone to intelligence into the AI agent. So that's really nice. I've got one. I've got a question that I'm going to pick out here. So Annie, you've been talking about companies that are very much at the forefront of technology that has systems. I used to work in a company like this. Now I've moved to a company where everything's on an Excel spreadsheet. I'm in Excel hell. How can you help?
Good question. But you know, we've had I've had customers that literally are there. These days, integration, and again, I don't want to get into a data discussion, but integration tools exist that where we can very quickly get that data all together. And guys, we especially when we're talking Gen AI and large language models, now we're talking about algorithms and models that can interact with human speech, human language, text, PDF reports, Excel spreadsheets, those kinds of things. It's getting easier and easier for us not to have to, in my certainly career, putting everything into a structured database and then running algorithms on those. That was the reality. You had to first kind of structure the data. Then came the advent, I guess, of text analytics, where there were algorithms that got better and better at interpreting text, adding those to algorithms and predictive and AI and machine learning models, which is, you see a testament to that, the use case that I've just spoken about. But we're getting to the space where there are algorithms that interact extremely well with a written report. Somebody's understanding of what went wrong during maintenance. What did they see? How can we convert that very easy from Excel hell or even Word or PDF hell to something I can analyze, get suggestions from? It's getting more, the tech is getting more sophisticated. There's algorithms out there for it. So absolutely.
I'll jump in and to add.
It's exciting.
Yeah, to add to that one, actually, Annie, start fast, right? Don't wait, because actually, and it's really interesting, drilling reports, maintenance reports, disparate, whilst that would historically would have been a more of a mess, actually large language models. Interestingly, the small language models as well, or much more smaller areas of data that can give you much more refined results because you can train those models. So we don't want to become too technical in the back end. We know the audience here, we're talking to engineers, but start now, start fast.
Question here from Tilani, which a very valued customer. I'd love to quickly answer his question. If Tilani's asking, how has been your experience with regard to interfacing with the with various OEMs, as most of them believe they have the correct tools? I agree with you, Tilani. I hate interacting with what we call black box type models. You have equipment suppliers, camera suppliers, all of these guys that tell you already, we've got this built into our equipment. Yes, they do, but you cannot know what decisions that makes. I prefer very much more open source, the things that you build yourself because you understand your business. You might, and they are limiting you, and they do OEM these things. They put them into already management systems of, for instance, I know in the business you work with, into, for instance, your camera and video management systems or your X-ray management systems and things like that. They put an algorithm that they built. I've tested some of those in and outside of your business, where I've found that knowing a little bit more about the business, we can vastly improve. My answer to you is they, for themselves, to build algorithms, they collect data into a database somewhere around the images that they take, around their algorithms use that data, And if they're a supplier to you, make sure that they expose that data to you, because you can run their algorithms, but you can use that data to build your own and understand if those do any better with your business understanding. So I push back very hard to the equipment suppliers, Tilani, and saying to them, I know for yourself, you are collecting that data. It's my data. I own it. I want access to it. Yes, I'll run your algorithms, but I also want to be able to see my data so that I can run my own, because typically, or some of these are not always fit for purpose in your particular business. It answers specific questions, or it makes specific decisions. You have more things that you wanted to do, and the data is there. And you can customize those if it's not so black boxy for you. So I would really recommend, even if you need our help liaising with these suppliers, we know a few of them very well, getting the data, understanding that data, and using it for your own purposes. No worries. Thanks.
I'm going to finish on this one. And it's nice to see so many questions come through. We'll probably take a couple and get back to you directly. By the way, just want to introduce two fantastic people on the team. So Josh, who's on the call today, plus Elise. Elise is our CEO, and would love to chat about a couple of these questions, as with Josh. Josh leads our initial engagements with sales inquiries. But the question is, and Annie, the board are talking to me about a platform, an AI platform. My worry is, going back to one of your points before, it's not built for my environment. What's your advice?
My advice is make sure it is. Again, I think we are not pushing back hard enough to our suppliers, if you will, and saying, this is great, or I'm speaking to a different, or I'm speaking to a coal mining customer currently. Again, their security intelligence division, and they're basically saying to me, got this tool, and this has been recommended to me, and can you have a look for me? I trust you a lot. Can you have a look whether you think this will suit this business need? And I came back to them and said, actually, I don't see any of your use cases. I don't see any mining use cases there. So ask them. I want to see a GUI that's built for me. I want to see something an engineer can interact with. I want to see something that makes sense for my business. It's really good at business process management, but on your website, I see use cases that's for banks and insurance companies and people doing all kinds of other things. I don't see a use case that looks like mine. So making very sure that when you're engaging with people supplying you with things, analytical systems, anything that's comes to one of the personas in your business, your engineering, your guys that sit in a control room, your guys that have to make decisions based on what the algorithms are feeding them, make sure that it talks to engineering and talks to your business.
Annie, at that point, we're gonna have to wrap up. Interestingly, we're going to meet someone who advises the World Economic Forum.
I don't know if you can see this.
We can't actually see it, Annie. I think, yeah. So we're going to meet with a professor who came up with who coined the term Industry 4.0, and we spent some time with him a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to talk. We're going to hop to that call now. Most important people, as I always say, on this call are you that turned up. So thank you ever so much. I meant to say this at the start. We also would like to say hello to a few people that are still in bed because they're watching the recording out in Houston, where it's whatever time of morning it is, 3 or 4 days. They asked us to record. So for our colleague or our valued customers out in Houston, this recording is going to, in that kind of center of oil and gas. I'd like to say hello to you, but for now, thank you ever so much for turning up. Really appreciate it, and thank you for on behalf of Annie and myself and the rest of the team at Data Shack.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate you attending.